Hi folks. So, as I have a broken right hand and I'm having to essentially learn to use the sword in my left hand for demonstration purposes, okay? And this gives an opportunity as well as being a drawback for my personal training. In a way, it's also, there's an opportunity for there for me to learn how to use the sword in my left hand better, which is good for my own personal development. It might be necessary if this hand doesn't work again after it's been treated medically, but also it means that, you know, I have another string to my bow. If this arm gets tired, then I can switch to using the sword in my left hand, which I have to admit I do occasionally do, but I'm very bad with the sword in my left hand, as you will see in following videos. I'm essentially a beginner with my left hand, despite the fact that I've been using this hand for 15-16 years. I've been using this hand really not at all. So it gives an opportunity there to go through beginner training that I can share with you with my left hand. Okay, so this side of me is a beginner. So we can go through some beginner training for the use of one-handed swords, both sabres and medieval one-handed swords. Any type of one-handed sword, Renaissance cut and thrust sword. But we're talking about cut and thrust styles here. Also, you know, it might help me, I do have left-handed students, and it might help me also to have some insight into how best to train them, and also being able to perhaps give them some advice ultimately on how to fight against right-handers, or indeed against other left-handers. So hopefully I can gain something out of this. So you'll remember the previous training tip video I gave was essentially about this motion of the sword. Okay, so it was about using the wrist and the muscles of the forearm and building up the strength in the forearm. Well, I'll tell you, over the last few days I've been starting to train left-handed, and man, I've been doing this for years with my right hand, but I'd forgotten how hard it is when you start with a new hand. Okay, I've been starting with my left hand, and the muscles on my forearm are really, really stiff. So remember, don't overdo it, build up gradually. And just start off with small movements, because your arms, if you're starting this, if you're a beginner, or indeed if you're like me having to do it with a new arm, your arm is not going to be used to this motion. Okay, so just first of all start, you know, spend probably a week or 2 weeks just getting the forearm starting to be used to this kind of motion, rocking backwards and forwards with the push and pull on the top and underneath of your forearm. Okay, yeah, you can change the angle a bit. You don't have to be straight up and down. Make sure you don't hit yourself in the head, of course, when you bring back. You don't want to be coming too back with the sword. You only want to be coming back at that angle at the most. Never bring it back far enough to hit yourself. Of course, that would be silly. And you're mostly striking forward, so that, you know, if you did hit something like a piece of wood, you'd hit it with a little bit of force. Good. Okay, so once you've done that for a couple of weeks and your forearms, you feel maybe starting to get a bit stronger, you're starting to get a bit better at that. What we're going to start doing is 2 motions that are known as moulinettes. Moulinette is the French word. In fact, there's an Italian word, molinello, which means the same thing. Moulinette means little windmill. Moulin is windmill, and et is small. Okay, so little windmill, it means making circles with the sword. Okay, now it doesn't matter whether you're intending to specialise in sabre or Renaissance side sword or medieval arming sword, okay, that being a one-handed sword. These are kind of common motions to pretty much all one-handed cut and thrust swords. If you've got a one-hand sword, it doesn't matter whether it's a machete and in fact if it's a stick as well. These are common motions. Okay, so what we're going to start off with is moving through a cut number 1 moulinette. So cut number 1 comes from the outside, and these numbered cuts come from British sabre fencing, and in fact they're very useful reference numbers that you can apply to any other fencing. Okay, so number 1 comes from the outside. This is my outside, this is my inside. The outside is the side that my back faces, and the inside is the side that my chest faces. Important, get your spare hand, your rear hand, whether it's left or right, doesn't really matter, and put it somewhere that's out of the way. That could be against your chest, or it could be behind your back, or it could be on your hip, it doesn't matter. I'm going to stick mine behind my back for now. Okay? And what you're going to start off doing is from the wrist, so the wrist is making the motion, I want you to start drawing a circle with the sword like this. So like you're cutting through an opponent's neck and then moving in a big arc and cutting through their neck again and cutting through their neck again. And this trajectory downwards from the outside is known as number one. Okay? Be careful not to hit yourself with the sword as it comes back up on your inside. So you're coming from the outside through the target and then to the inside and back to the outside again. Okay? This circle, number one moulinet, and do that lots. Okay? I would suggest if you're just starting doing this type of exercise, then perhaps do it in sets of 10. So doing 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on up to 10. Take a little break of 10 seconds and then do another 10. Maybe the first day you do 40, the next day you do 40, then the next day you do 50, and you slowly build it up. It's just like doing reps with dumbbells or barbells or any other kind of weight exercise, resistive exercise. A very important detail, as you move through the target area, and you should aim at something when you're doing this, it should be about face or chest level. I'm aiming at the camera obviously, but you can fix something on your wall, or you can use a mirror and cut it yourself as a target, or in fact just a window, whatever. So aim at something, but when you go through that target area, your edge should lead all the way through, and only then do you turn the sword. So if you see what I'm not doing, and what is very common to do, is people start turning the sword in the middle. The problem with doing that, and it is the most natural thing for your wrist to do, is that you're going to hit with the flat. It's very important that you hit with the edge goes through the target and then turns. Okay, so edge through the target, then turn. Edge through the target and turn. And so on. And once you get into this, remember, edge through the target and turn, you can pick up a bit of rhythm and keep going with it. Your elbow and shoulder will move a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that, but at the moment I would want you to concentrate on doing this with the wrist, because undoubtedly the weakest part of most people's arms are going to be their forearms. Okay? Especially people who go to the gym, they build up their triceps, the biceps, hopefully their deltoids as well, but they tend not to have very strong sinewy forearms, and this is what you need for swordsmanship. You need to be able to manipulate the sword with the smallest muscles that you've got in the forearm. There are cuts that we'll look at later on that employ the elbow and the shoulder as well, but for now I want you to concentrate on the wrist. Once you've done this to the outside cut, then inevitably we do the inside cut as well. I'm a little bit restricted for space here because I'm next to a light unit here. Okay, so, and obviously this is very important. In your training area, look at the ceiling, the light fittings, and try not to destroy any parts of your house, okay? But the inside line comes through exactly the same from this side, and this is the number 2 moulinet. So, outside round, through the target with the edge, then turn, through the target with the edge, then turn, through, turn, through, turn. So you're leading with the edge all the way through, and then turning the sword. Okay, and you'll notice to the outside, you probably have to move your elbow a little bit more than you were doing from the inside than you were from the outside. Okay, so this is number 2 moulinet. So number 2 is downwards from the inside, number 1 is downwards from the outside. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and so on. Okay, trying as much as possible to cut from the wrist for now. And this will really work out your forearms. What you'll probably find is after you do it the next morning, this muscle up here, which no bodybuilders ever really think about, that is going to be aching like hell. Okay? So don't overdo it, build up slowly and surely, just like with weights, and there you go. So that's what, if you're beginning and you're working on these things and you've got an interest in doing this stuff, this is what I advise. First thing, do the wiggle exercise. Do that for a couple of weeks. Wiggle, 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 yeah, you know the song. Then start moving on to the moulinets, and for now just do the 1 moulinet and the 2 moulinet. Okay, leading with the edge. And I'll reiterate, I'm a beginner with my left hand here, so I'm finding this as hard as hopefully some of you will find it. Okay, cheers.